Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation, which is all about reimagining the workplace. Of course, we've had a lot of changes to the workplace recently, and what I want to do is take you into the future and show you what that workplace of the future might look like, but also look at some of the challenges that people are facing now with the new workplace that's been forced on us, this whole idea of working from home. So we'll look at those two things today. But before I want to talk about the future, because we'll spend most of our time today doing that, let me take you on a journey into the past and tell you the story of Steve Shirley. Now, Steve Shirley is a British entrepreneur who set up a software company in the UK more than half a century ago, in the 1960s, in the early days of computing. So it was pretty leading edge at the time. But there were three things that Steve did in that company, which by the way was called Freelance Programmers, that made it quite different. So the first one is that most of the technology companies at the time were focused on financial services and accounting software. But Steve thought that was quite boring, so freelance programmers worked on technical software like Boeing and the military. But that wasn't the most interesting thing. The second thing was that almost all the staff in the company were women. Now, women did play a really important role in the early days of computing, even though they don't always get the credit for it, but still it was unusual for a computing company to have all its staff, or almost all its staff, were women. And the third thing I think is the most interesting one, that almost all the staff worked from home. So this is pre-internet, pre-broadband, pre-NBN, and these were employees who were scattered all around the UK, and Royal Mail would deliver the mail twice a day. So these women were working on their punched cards. They'd do whatever programming they had to do, pop it in the mail, the poster would come and pick it up, take it to London, it would be fed into the mainframe computers overnight for processing, and then it would spit out the answers the next morning and then be sent out to the employees around the country to do their work the next day. So it was a pretty primitive way of working from home, but it actually happened more than half a century ago, before broadband internet, before internet at all. And this company was very successful, so successful that when they floated on the UK stock exchange, it was a multi-billion-dollar float, and Steve and some of the other founders became instant millionaires. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you is, oh, by the way, I should say that the person I've been calling Steve Shirley is actually Dame Stephanie Shirley, and I'm not being disrespectful by calling her Steve. This is in the early days in a very male-dominated business world, and particularly in technology. When she wanted to organize a meeting with a potential client, she'd write a letter or memo and sign her name as Steve, so that when she turned up at the meeting and they found out she was a woman, they couldn't kick her out. If you want to find out more about Steve Shirley's, Dame Stephanie Shirley's story, you can watch her amazing TED Talk, Why Do Ambitious Women Have Flat Heads? I'm not going to answer that question for you today, but it's really worth listening to her story and watching her story. But the reason I'm sharing this with you is to say that if Stephanie Shirley could create a really successful technology company with staff working from home more than half a century ago, there's no reason we can't do it now. And this is what's happening, and it's an idea that I've been championing for a long time, and 2020, as a result of the pandemic, has forced this on many businesses, and many organizations are now looking at what's the workplace of the future going to look like. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So my rules of engagement for all my presentations, I've got 3 of them. So one is I'd like you to give you things to think about. So you will definitely get some thinking time and some ideas to think about. So if you can, see if you can close off any other interruptions and distractions for this hour that we've got together. I also like you to be a bit playful today, because there'll be an opportunity for you to engage. I don't want to make this just me lecturing for an hour. There'll be some polls, there'll be some puzzles, there'll be some exercises. Somebody will have the chance to win a fabulous prize before the hour's up. So join in and lean in and take part, because it'll help you and it'll help everybody else in the room as well. And it's also, from a serious point of view, I want to make sure that you've got some actions that you can take away and put into practice as well when we finish. For those who don't know me, I'm a futurist. My name's Gihan Pereira. For the last decade, I've been helping organizations and leaders lead in uncertain, disruptive times. And, people say these are unprecedented times, and it's true, but they're only unprecedented because it's happening to everybody at the same time. And over the last 10 years or so, I've worked with a number of organizations. Here are a few that I've worked with at a leadership level, and there've been industries that have been going through major change and disruption as well. And I'm showing this to just demonstrate that it's happening everywhere. It's happening in government, non-government organizations, with large multinationals, with smaller businesses, and all of them are going through change and disruption. Perhaps for the first time, everyone's going through it at the same time. So I've actually decided to do this in 3 parts. So today's presentation is kind of an overview. It's a big picture of what the workplace of the future might look like, and also what some of the big picture around some of the working from home issues are. But I'd also like to allow more time than just an hour to explore some of these ideas. So next month, I'm going to run a second session, which is going to be very different from this, and it'll be mostly me answering your questions. Don't let that stop you from asking questions today, but next month, it'll be very different. It won't be me presenting, it'll be me doing basically a Q&A, doing the sort of coaching that I do with my coaching clients, with my clients who are leaders in organizations, to help them manage this future workplace, but you can ask your questions as well. And then in November, I'll run a third session, which is all about planning. It's good getting close to the end of the year, but it's also if you're thinking about what the workplace might look like and how you're going to implement that in the next year, then come along to that. In fact, what I'll do is I'll enroll everybody in these next 2 sessions as well, and so you can come along to this whole 3-part series. Okay, so the first bit of interaction, I have a quick quiz question for you. This is a question about 4 companies, and the question I have is, what do these 4 companies have in common? Just as a bit of a hint, it's not specifically about their workplace, but the thing they have in common is quite relevant to us in the world today. So here are the 4 companies. The first one's Groupon, which is a marketing promotional site that sells coupons. In Australia, Scoopon is the one that's more well known, but elsewhere in the world, Groupon. Slack, which a few years ago was one of the world's fastest growing companies, and it's in trying to replace email as a workplace communication tool. Uber, which we all know for ride sharing, and a whole bunch of other services now, and WhatsApp, which is a messaging service. So what do those 4 companies have in common? So if you're in the chat room, and if you haven't already, in the chat when you're taking part, if you switch your settings from all panelists to all panelists and attendees, then everybody will see the responses that are coming in. But I'll read it out anyway. So some people have still got all panelists. So I'll read out disruptors. Nick says GFC. Julian says experience and service rather than products. By the way, there's more than one right answer to this. I was working with a leadership group last week, and one of the leaders said, these are all things that my Gen Z kids can't do without. So you look, there's lots of different correct answers to this. Internet-based, no one owns the infrastructure, disruptors. I did get the correct answer earlier, and it was from Nick. So Nick said GFC, and this is, as I said, there's more than one correct answer, but the one I want to focus on today is all 4 of these companies were founded during the GFC. So the GFC, as you know, of course it did affect Australia, but not as much as it affected other parts of the world, especially Europe and North America. In fact, in the US, they called the GFC the Great Recession because it had a huge impact. And yet all of these 4 companies were founded during the GFC. Now, I'm not sharing this with you because I'm a motivational speaker, rah, rah, rah. If they can do it, you can. With every crisis, there's an opportunity, go for it. That may all be true, but that's not the reason I'm sharing it with you. The reason I'm sharing it with you is because in crisis, things change, and it's actually easier for external disruptors to come in and change things. When everything's going well, people go, oh, it should be right, no worries, we're going okay at the moment. But when there's a crisis and change, people start reevaluating everything. So customers do that, employees do that, leaders do that, communities, and we're seeing this now in states in Australia are deciding what's right for them, countries are doing that, and so everyone's starting to reevaluate, and it's easier for disruption to happen. And it's happening in workplaces as well. So people are reevaluating, what does work mean to them, what does a workplace mean to them. So people are asking lots of questions, and in today's presentation you might walk out of here, when we talk about reimagining the workplace, with more questions than answers. And if that's the case, I'm okay with that, and I hope you're okay with that as well, because I don't want to give you all the answers. Today especially, I want you to think a bit broader and maybe have some more questions. Okay, so with that as a frame, what's the big idea around the workplace of the future? And I think the word workplace is really interesting, because there's two words, there's work and place. And a lot of the conversation that's happening now is around, where does the work get done? What is the workplace? When you start expanding the idea of workplace and say, well, it doesn't have to be in an office anymore, then you can start focusing on, well, who does the work, when does the work get done, as well as where does the work get done. So today I want to talk broadly about two things. I've got three things here, but the first one is work as a result of expanding the workplace. So we'll look at the workplace of the future and what that means for the future of work. And then we'll look a little bit deeper into this idea of working from home, because it's really important for a lot of people at the moment. Some people are struggling with it. Some people are thriving. Leaders and managers are struggling because they've been thrust into this. Even though it's been going on for a while, many people are doing it for the first time, and it's not easy. The third thing is I'd like you to have a bit of an action plan. And as I said, we've got 2 more sessions to build up that action plan more. So we're not going to spend a lot of time in that third area, but I still want you to walk away with some actions. Okay, so the big picture around all of the planning that we're doing now, whether it's to do with the workplace or anything else, is you're not trying to create the perfect plan, because things are changing so much. In fact, in a crisis, you might have thrown away all your planning, your long-term planning, and when you pick it up and look at it again, it's metaphorically might look like a little kid's picture. And so you may think you need to get better, and you do, but you don't need to create a masterpiece. You're not trying to create the perfect plan. What you're trying to create is something that's somewhere in the middle that gives you momentum to keep going and look a little bit into the future, but also know when you need to switch. And we'll talk about that as we go. Okay, so let's look at this first part of this, which is all about the future workplace, and is looking broader than just working from home. We'll get to working from home, but if you look at the post-pandemic workplace, it's not only about where the work gets done, but it's also when the work gets done and who's in the team that does the work. And there's been a groundswell of support for this idea of workplace flexibility. Even pre-pandemic, people were saying, especially younger people, the Generation Y and the Generation Zs, why do we need to come to an office? Just, tell us what we need to do, tell us, give us the tools to achieve it, and then let us do it. And it doesn't matter when, where, and how the work happens. We'll make it work. So when we think about this, let's look at these 3 areas. So first of all, where does the work get done? And this, of course, is the main topic of conversation when we talk about working from home versus working from an office. Now, this is something I've been pushing for a long time. So this news article was written about 15 years ago. About 15 years ago, part of my regular routine was to take my laptop down, sit at an outdoor cafe, and every Friday was the day in my business where I'd be working on the business rather than in the business. So I'd have my laptop and I'd be working there. And it was I wasn't the only person in the world doing it, but it was still a pretty novel idea. So much so that a local journo who was walking by, he saw me, he thought this was really interesting, and he said, can I take a photo and interview you? And I had this little write-up in the local community newspaper about 15 years ago. 10 years ago, a friend and I, Dr. Chris Pudney, we wrote this book, Out of Office, which was all about how employees could create an environment and convince and persuade their managers to allow them to work away from the office, not full-time necessarily, but some of the time if they wanted to. And crucially, it was about working away from the office. It didn't necessarily mean working from home. That book's out of date now because the technology has now advanced quite a lot, but these are conversations that have been going on for a while. And when we think about the future, it's not only about working from home. It really is about working from virtually anywhere, because once you decide that you don't need to be in the office, it opens up huge possibilities. So we could be working like our workplace of the future. Absolutely could be people who are working from home. It could be people who are working from cafes and other shared spaces. They could be working, when travel starts again, in airline lounges or in co-working spaces, these new facilities that have been created to create this third space between the home and the office. They could be working in shared offices, or maybe even working illegally when they're on their phone in the car. But why does it have to be illegal? It is now, but in the future, maybe one of your workplaces will be your self-driving car, because you don't need to keep an eye on traffic, and that might be one of your workplaces. And this doesn't only have to be in the future. So smart businesses and smart organizations are doing this already. So Siemens, large global multinational company with 140,000 staff in 43 countries, including Australia, they've announced in July, so a couple of months ago, that all their staff are going to be allowed to work an average of 2 or 3 days a week away from the office, in consultation with their manager to figure out the right schedule. But this is all around the world. All Siemens staff are going to be allowed to do that. Now, at the moment, of course, that means mostly that it'll be office or home, but in the future it could be anywhere, because Siemens leadership recognizes that it's about hiring the right people, empowering them and trusting them to get the work done to achieve the results. So already companies are jumping on this opportunity. Pre-pandemic, Microsoft in the US would allow this as well. Microsoft headquarters in Seattle, they would allow their staff to work in co-working spaces rather than coming to Microsoft, the mothership in Seattle, because in fact, by supporting them, not only allow them, but Microsoft would actually pay the subscription, the membership subscription, to join one of these co-working spaces on behalf of their employees. 2 reasons. One is that it saves them expensive office space if their team members don't have to use up a desk in an office. But the more important one is that they recognize that Microsoft staff are not only hanging out with other Microsoft staff then. These are employees who are hanging out with people from other businesses, other industries, other Microsoft customers in the co-working spaces. So it actually increases the opportunity for collaboration and innovation rather than decreasing it because the team isn't in the office. And this is something that already many organizations are thinking about as being the workplace of the future. So there's been a lot of research done during this pandemic already, and employers are saying we want to give our people more flexibility post-pandemic, and employees are saying we want more workplace flexibility as well post-pandemic. So that's the workplace, but it leads to some other interesting implications when you think about when the work gets done and who does the work. So if you get away from the idea that office workers are going to be Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, within commute distance of the office, then you can be a bit more flexible with working hours. And there's some interesting conversations happening already around that. So again, this is pre-pandemic. Microsoft Japan, for its more than 2,000 staff members in Japan, they allowed them a 4-day working week. And it didn't mean they had to work extra long on those 4 days. They just had to work 4 normal days, but they were allowed to, get the work done, do whatever you have to do to get the work done. And Microsoft was hoping that the productivity wouldn't go down too much if they weren't working that extra 5th day. What they found was the opposite, that productivity went up and sales went up. So the performance actually improved because they got the work done and they were efficient. A couple of things that they did. So they figured out, so staff figured this out for themselves. They said, no meeting can be longer than 30 minutes, and we're going to have more online meetings so people don't have to travel around to meet, because we just haven't got the time to have all those inefficiencies in our workday when we've got to get everything done in 4 days. So people find a way to make it work. And just by the way, if you want one really practical idea to take away from today that will improve productivity, pick the one in the middle of the screen there, 30-minute meetings. Whether you've got a distributed team or whether you're working in an office, I reckon if you say that no meeting can be more than 30 minutes long, you'll find it'd be amazing to see that I don't think you'll see any loss in productivity or results from the meeting. So it's a good experiment. Just try it out for a couple of weeks and see what happens. Across the ditch in New Zealand, on a smaller scale, Perpetual Guardian did a similar experiment with a 4-day week, and they found there's some real employee benefits: lower stress, greater work satisfaction, better work-life integration, because people had more opportunities to, they got their work done in the 4 days, and they had 3 days for themselves, rather than a 5-day week, which wasn't always necessarily really productive because people were still taking time off to do personal things in a 5-day week because they didn't want to do it all on the weekend. Okay, so there are definite advantages to that. And the third thing, which is probably the most radical one, is who's in your team. See, the traditional office team, or the traditional idea of a team, because it's based in an office, is everyone who's here physically is our core team and everybody else is an outsider. But as soon as you break that, and even if you say some people are going to be working from home, as soon as you break that dynamic, the culture changes and who's in your team can be widely expanded. So for example, there's no reason why you can't have people from all around the country in your team. So I live in, I think, the world's best place, Western Australia, in Perth, but there's no reason that Perth-based teams have to be all based in Perth. They could be anywhere around the country, and they don't even have to be in cities. They could be in the regions as well. In fact, there's a bit of a myth that people are moving away from the regions and into our capital cities. The research, the statistics show that actually the net migration is in the other direction, for a tree change, a sea change, and now increasingly a COVID change. And of course, there are smart people in the regions who don't want to work they don't want to join the rat race, but they can equally be part of your team. Another thing that's really interesting is that, especially this year, we've seen that physical distance, like geographical distance, doesn't matter so much. And you could have a global team where the thing that's most important is not so much distance, but time zone. And so again, I live in Perth, which is the biggest time zone in the world. The more people in this time zone than any other, and that could be a factor in the workplace and the teams of the future. I know there's some people in this session today from the Philippines. Again, we share that world's biggest time zone. I think we're in a very, very well placed for the future workplace, and the rest of Australia as well. Not as strong time zone wise, but there's no reason why you can't have a global team. The next one is bringing in external experts, and they could be external, like people outside your business like me, or they could be external to your team, but they're within the organization. So I've heard even in the last few months of organizations or companies who are bringing in, we're bringing in an expert from the UK, or we're bringing an expert from Canada, or we're bringing an expert from New Zealand, who's been in the company, but we've just never tapped into them before because we weren't used to using a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting to bring that person in to our online meeting. So there's no reason why that can't happen. And the last one, which is often forgotten, is this idea of lost talent. So these are people who, for whatever reason, have chosen that they don't want to be part of that regular office workplace. I mentioned one earlier, so people in the regions, smart people in the regions who don't want to move to the cities. Another one might be smart, savvy, professional women who've taken time out of the workforce, had taken maternity leave, want to come back into the workforce, but they don't necessarily want to do full-time work in a CBD office, but they could maybe work a few days a week during school hours, and you can tap into their skills and talent without forcing them to work in an office, or the choice is that they don't work for you at all. Another example of lost talent is somebody who was a great employee, a great team member, but had to leave because their partner relocated, so they moved. Again, there's no reason why they can't now be part of your team. A couple of personal examples for me. So one is, as I'm speaking at a conference in Dunedin in April next year. It was supposed to be April this year, and I was looking at the travel for that conference. So door to door, for me to fly from Perth to Dunedin, it's actually airplane door to airplane door, is 14 hours travel, and then 2 days later there's 14 hours going back the other day, the other way, and then to speak at a conference for a 2-hour presentation. And now it doesn't mean that events are going, like in-person events are going to go away, but a lot of those, like a lot of the value that people are going to get is going to happen because they don't have to worry about distance anymore. So people are coming up with clever ways now that distance doesn't have to be an issue. Another example which is related to that is I'm working with a client in Townsville, and she wanted me to come in and speak in June. They were doing their 5-year plan, and she wanted me to give them a bit of a futuristic view of what the world's going to look like in 5 years and what's it going to mean for us in Australia, and particularly for her organization, her industry. But she said, in addition to that, why don't we include that not only do you come and speak to our leaders in June, and this is all online, but we're going to have these virtual town halls every month for the next 6 months. Let's include for the next 3 months, you drop in and do a little mini presentation at our virtual town halls for everybody. So then everybody is aligned with that strategic vision. And again, it's something that even pre-pandemic, if travel was allowed, we would never have done something like that because the costs and the time are so prohibitive for me to cross the country every month for 4 months. But by doing it this way, it was that didn't matter so much. The travel time was completely taken out of the equation. Okay, so this is something that I'm kind of passionate about. So I've talked about this in quite a lot of examples, and some of this is not going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month. But make no mistake that the office of the future and the workplace of the future is going to have fluid teams, where perhaps you're going to have a project where you bring in people, the best people in the world, literally, to work in your team for a short time. Then at the end of the project, the team disbands and moves away. And now this is possible. It actually has been possible for a while, but now people are starting to think about it. Okay, so that's the first area, which is about the workplace of the future. We're now going to look at this whole idea of working from home, but let me just stop and just see if there's any questions or comments. If you've got questions or comments, share them in the chat. Again, there'll be a lot of time for questions in the session next month, but don't feel that you have to hold back your questions till then. I'm happy to answer them today if you want me to answer any. Okay, so let me just bring that up for you so that. And I'll just give you a minute or so to just ask any questions, type them in. Yeah, so Jeremy's asked a question. Actually, Jeremy's only to our panelists, so not everyone can see this. Will fluid teams lead to more of a gig approach to work? Yeah, look, I think that's an interesting thing, Jeremy. I think that there's already been a shift to everybody being responsible for their own career. And I think there is going to be a shift to this whole idea of gun for hire, if you like you've got this expertise and you can then offer that expertise in different areas. I mean, this is what I do in my business. In my business, I've got expertise as a futurist, as a leadership expert, helping people through uncertainty in work from home environments and so on. And then I kind of make myself available as required. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to be as extreme as that, where that's the only work that I do. But it could be that people are available even within an organization, but it could be as part of the global team where they're available to other people and other teams as required. So I think there is more of this idea of, I think there will be that gig, if you like, gig economy. The only reason I don't like using that term is people start thinking about Uber drivers when they think about, oh, is it just going to go to the lowest bidder and there's going to be this frantic competition. And I don't think that's going to be the way it's going to work. It's actually going to work on expertise and saying, I've got expertise, and it may not be best used for this company, for my company at this very moment. So why don't I offer it in other areas as well? So yes, I think so. Yeah, and Jackie says gig economy also asks individuals to have more skills to promote themselves. Will full-time employment with one company go away? Yeah, look, that's an interesting thing, and I think that's a little bit further down the track when that happens. But certainly there's a shift away from, say, my dad's my dad's environment when he grew up before he retired, and his career was, the idea was that he would work for one company. That didn't happen because we moved countries and so on. But a lot of people of his age, now he's in his 80s, had the idea that they'd have a company for life. Then it went to careers for life, with the Gen Xers would be in one career for life, and then the Gen Ys and Gen Zs already thinking multiple careers in my life. Why should I be stuck with one career that I chose when I was 15 or 16? Yeah, so I think there's Jay who's asked this question. It's hard to have a hybrid, some people in an office together and others zooming in. It's a really interesting challenge, and it's the idea. So I don't like the word, I don't like talking about people as remote team members or virtual team members, because it creates that two hierarchy, like that second class citizen thing. And we'll definitely talk more about that next month in the question and answer session. Yeah, and Lyndall's interesting question about managed teamwork. So when teamwork is required, there are absolutely ways to make teamwork work when you've got a distributed team. The people don't physically have to be in the same room for teamwork to happen. And again, I often say to organizations, this may be new to you, but that doesn't mean it's new. This idea of distributed teams and working from home and working from anywhere has been going on for a long time. This is why I've been kind of pushing it for at least 20 years now. It's just that it's been forced on many organizations for the first time in 2020. So there are lots of good solutions to making it happen, and you don't have to be breaking new ground. It may just be learning from people who've done it before. And again, that's one of the things we'll talk about next month. I know that a couple of my coaching clients also have questions around how do you make that teamwork work? How do you collaborate and innovate when you're working, when you've got a distributed team? You're not all in the office, so we'll cover that next month as well. Okay, excellent. So let's move on to the second area. The second half of today is talking about this whole idea of how do you create the right working from home culture. And I'm going to talk about it in the context of energy. So again, as I said, today is more about asking questions than necessarily giving you answers, although I'll answer whatever I can. And some of the things have already come up. So, and using this metaphor of a battery, and like what energy do you have in your culture when people are working from home compared to when you have a really thriving culture working in the office. So there's these 6 levels we're going to go through. Actually, we'll do 5 of them because we'll do the first 2 together. And I wanted to share with you what goes wrong and how do you take people to greater energy from the left to the right. So the first 2 are where you've got a culture that's either resistant to this idea of working from home, or they're reluctant to do it. So they're doing it, but they've been dragged kicking and screaming to make it happen. They're always complaining about what's not working for them rather than looking at how to make it better. And part of the reason for that is because of our current circumstances. And there's no doubt, and I've spoken with lots of leaders and HR professionals over the last few months, and looking at the research from all around the world, that work isn't the top issue for many employees at the moment. Here's just one of the many pieces of research done saying, what do people care about at the moment? It's absolutely, I care about my financial security and for myself and my family. Obviously, in a global health pandemic, we care about our personal health, and then things like, how do we make this homeschooling thing work? And it's not only my financial security for the future, but how can I pay my bills for next week? And how do I choose which bills I pay if I have to make those sort of choices? So mental health is a real issue in workplaces at the moment. And it's not one of those things that you can just sweep under the carpet and go, look, just get over it, because it's not. It's a real issue for many people. And you often hear people say, we're in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. I don't think that's true. We're all in the same storm, but we've each got our own individual boats trying to navigate our way through the storm. And you can't judge people on the outside. There may be 2 people who look very similar, similar roles at work, similar seniority, similar salaries, live in a similar area, and yet their working from home environment might be quite different. One might have kids who they're trying to manage their homeschooling. They may have a partner who's out of a job or worried about whether they're going to have a job. They might have a smaller home and not a good environment to be able to do to set up a laptop. They may have not as good internet access, and the other person might have the exact opposite, and you just can't tell. And I think more than anything else, I mean, this is a big issue, but more than anything else, this is a quotation that I often share, and have shared in the last few years, but I think is particularly relevant now, is just be kind, have a lot of empathy, because people are going through stuff that you may have no idea what battle's going on in their lives, and they're just doing the best they can with the resources that they have available. Big topic, and again, if you've got questions around this, then we can definitely tackle them next month. The next area is they've got beyond that, so they're going, okay, well, we're willing to go along with this, but all they're doing is they're being compliant. So you tell them what to do, they'll do it. They're not taking initiative, and as a result, they're not as productive as they were in the office, but at least they're compliant. And there's a reason for this. There's a number of reasons for this, but there's one really big reason that's happening right now. To lead you into this, let me do a little bit of a puzzle for you. So I've got this puzzle for you with 4 cards. You can see the 4 cards here. Let me explain what the cards are. So every card has a picture on the front. So you can see a fish and a dragon, and every card has a solid color on the back. So you can see a red and a yellow. And I'm going to make a statement, that every red-backed card has a dragon on the front. Now, the question that I'm asking for you is not whether it's true or false. I'm curious to know whether it's true or false. The question I'm asking is because, so some of you may have figured that you can't figure out yet whether it's true or false for sure without turning over some of the cards. So there's a statement, every red-back card has a dragon on the front. Is it true or false? The correct answer is I don't know. You need to turn over some of the cards. And you could turn them all over, and you definitely get the answer then, but I can tell you that you don't need to turn over all of the cards. So my real question for you is, which cards must you turn over to be able to tell me for sure whether this is true or false? Now, if you think the answer is all 4 of them, even though I've told you not, type in 1, 2, 3, 4. If you think it's 1 and 4, type in 1, 4. If you think it's 2 and 3, whatever. So type in whatever you think is the right answer. I haven't seen the right answer coming in yet, so you can vote more than once. Oh, actually, I have seen the right answer coming in now once. One person's got the right answer. Okay, and because one person has the right answer, that was Lynn. So for bragging rights, I think it's Lynn. Zoom has compressed your name, but I think it's Lynn. So let me explain the answer through to you. So thank you everyone for playing along. So here's how it works. So let me show you. There's actually 2 really obvious ones. So the first obvious one is number 1. You need to turn it over to see whether there's a dragon on the back. You definitely need to know that because it's a red back. The other obvious one is number 3. You don't need to turn it over because it doesn't have a red back, so it becomes irrelevant. You also don't need to turn over number 4 because if it's got a red back, then it doesn't give you any extra information. And if it's got a yellow or a blue or a black or whatever, then it becomes irrelevant like number 3. You do need to turn over number 2 because if it's got a red back, then the answer is, the statement is false. Okay, so that's the correct answer, 1 and 2. So Lynn, that might be Lyndall actually, got the right answer. Congratulations. I've done this with conference audiences where there are hundreds of people in the room. I do this puzzle, and at the end I say how many people got the right answer, and even in groups of 500, 700, only a few people will put up their hands. And it's because most people get number 1, but they don't get number 2 because there's no red, there's no back, and there's no dragon. And I reckon when we're looking in our future, there are these 2 kinds of futures like this. So one is like number 1, which is a future that you can see, and it's quite, even if it's challenging, at least you can see it, so you can create a plan for it. But the second one, like number 2, is a future that we can't see, and that means that it's more difficult to plan for that, it's more difficult to navigate it, it's more difficult to feel comfortable with it. Some people love it. So I have a friend who loves uncertainty and change because he says uncertainty creates opportunity, and there's always opportunities there, and he's right, but many people don't feel the same way. In fact, let's do a poll about this. I've got this little poll for you here, and so what I'll do is let me paste into the chat box the link to the poll. So you'll see it there. You can just click the link there and go to the poll, or if you want to open up your web browser, you can type in the address that you see on the screen here, and you see the poll come up. Let me show it for you here. So you see the poll here, it's got 4 questions. So, and basically you answer them all at the same time. You rate yourself from rate each answer from 1 to 5. So the first 2 questions are about you, and it says, how well do you operate? Do you operate well when you've got a known future, even if it's challenging? Do you operate well when you've got an uncertain future? Again, from 1 to 5. And then the second one for your team. Does your team operate well when there's a known future? And does your team operate well when there's an uncertain future? So we'll see. I'll give you a little bit more time to vote on this. Okay, and as I've seen a pattern, so I've run this. Actually, I've run this over years, but I've seen a particular pattern that's been common over the last few years, but particularly over the last few months when I've worked with groups and I've run this poll. It's been even more pronounced. You might be able to guess what it is, and it's coming through here. It's actually, there's one thing that's a little bit different with this group, which is interesting, different in a positive way. I'll explain what it is. Okay, so I'm going to leave that poll open for, let's leave it a few more seconds, but let's have a look at the results. So we can see here that most people, and this is probably not surprising, that you think that most people operate well when the future is certain, so more than 4 out of 5, you rate yourself as 4 out of 5, and also that your team operates well when the future's known. It's what I think is really interesting is that with a lot of other groups that I've worked with, they generally tend to rate their teams lower. So they rate themselves higher, but their team's lower. And when you look at the uncertain one, so you can see there's a gap both between questions 1 and 2, and then between 3 and 4. And that's common. So many of us feel, you know what, as long as we know the future, even if it's difficult, we can build towards it. But if it's not, we can't, we feel less comfortable with that. And you can see that's the same, people are saying the same is true with your teams as well. Okay, so that's interesting. And it's one of the things that is affecting productivity at the moment. So we've got to figure out ways to manage that, because we can't say, click our fingers, wave a magic wand, and let's hope for a certain future, because that's just not the way the world's working at the moment. It's more uncertain than ever before for many people around the world. So what do we do? So another bit of interaction here. As I said at the start, I want to give somebody the chance to win a fabulous prize, which is a copy of my special report about being more productive working from home. If you would like a copy of the prize, in the chat room, just say pick me Fat Cat or pick me Flapper, or say yes please, pick me, and you don't have to work very hard for this prize, I should tell you. So okay, so I've got Tina saying pick me. So Tina was the first person to say that. So I'm going to work with Tina first. So Tina Yemetas, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Okay, so there's a chance for you, Tina, to win this fabulous prize, but you've got to do a little bit of work for it. As I said, it's not going to be particularly difficult work. So let me show you how it's going to work. So the prize is in one of these 3 boxes, 1, 2, or 3. So Tina, and just Tina please, just so I can see her responses in the chat. So Tina, this is just a random guess. Which of the 3 boxes do you think the prize is in? 1, 2, okay, so Tina's gone for box 2. Okay, so let's just mark that here. Okay, so Tina thinks the prize is in box 2. I can tell you, Tina, that it's not in box 1. Okay, so I'm going to give you a second chance here, and the second chance is, I'm telling you, it's not in box 1. Do you want to stay with your original choice, which is 2, or do you want to switch to box 3? Okay, so Tina has chosen to stay with box 2. Okay, let's ask the audience. All right, audience, this is your chance to contribute and perhaps help Tina win this fabulous prize. She's made a choice. She's picked box 2. Do you think she should stay or switch? Stay or switch? Can you just type in either stay or switch so we can see the answers coming in? Stay or switch? Stay or switch? Okay, I see a few people going change, which is the same as switch. One person says change, the odds increase. Tina, you can probably see some of the results there. I reckon it's about 50-50 in stay or switch, but let me not try and sway your answer. So again, just Tina, has the audience swayed you in any way? What answer do you want to lock in? Do you want to stay or switch? Okay, so Tina's going to stay. Okay, so Tina's going to say stay. which is such a pity, because if you'd switched, you'd have got the fabulous prize, which was hiding behind box 3. But thank you for playing along, and as a gift for playing along, then I'll send you the prize anyway. Just by the way, I'm going to send everybody a copy of this because you all played along, and thank you for doing that. But let me explain the logic behind this and the reason that I'm sharing this with you. So let's look at this. Let's look at what happened here. So there are 3 options. And I think you'd all agree that Tina's first choice was a random choice, and she had a 1 in 3 chance of winning. Now, I hope you'd also agree that if she chooses to stay, then her chance of winning, doesn't matter what I do. I could add empty boxes, I could take away empty boxes, I could dance a jig, I could sing a song. It doesn't matter. If she chooses to stay, her chance of winning is still 1 in 3. I hope you agree with that. So the only interesting thing that we need to check is if she switches, have her odds increased. So let's have a look what happens. So there are 3 possibilities which Tina doesn't know. If the prize was in box 1 and she's chosen box 2, then I'd have to eliminate box 3 and switching would win. If the prize was in box 3, which it was, then I'd have to eliminate box 1, which I did, and again switching wins. If the prize was in box 2 and she got it right first time, then I'd eliminate one of the others and switching would lose. So 1 in 3 times switching loses if she happened to get it right the first time, and 2 out of 3 times switching wins. So actually the strategy of switching is right. You should switch because 2 out of 3 times you're going to win if you switch. 1 out of 3 times you win if you stay. So Tina was lucky that, so I was unlucky because she chose the wrong box initially, and so in that case switching would have won for her. And of course there's some luck involved in this, but the reason I'm sharing this with you is this is known as a Monty Hall project. A problem. Monty Hall was a US game show host in the 1950s, and he used to do this on TV every week. So he'd do this little experiment where somebody would get the chance to come up on the stage and win the opportunity to go play this game. And he had these 3 doors on stage, and now he didn't have a fabulous prize like my book. So every week he used to give away a car. So 2 of the doors were empty, and one of them had a car behind it. The contestant would pick one of the doors, he'd open an empty door, and then he'd say, do you want to stay or switch? The audience would yell out, stay, switch, and so on. This is before social media, but people were writing to the newspapers because they knew about this every week, saying this is why you should stay, this is why you should switch. Mathematicians were writing in, explaining the logic of switching, and most people would choose to stay for 3 reasons. One is they felt regret if they picked the winning door straight away, and then they switched away and they didn't get to win the car. The second reason was they thought it actually doesn't make a difference, and the third reason was they thought I've made my decision. It doesn't matter. I'm going to stick with my decision. So just for today's experiment, I did it very fast. I didn't give you the chance to calculate the logic and the odds and everything. But the point I want to make is that many of us are used to, especially if we're experienced, we're used to making decisions that are right because they're based on our experience and our expertise, particularly experience, which we even think of as intuition. And sometimes other people look at that and go, that's amazing. And yet, sometimes that's going to lead us astray in the future because the world has changed, and we've got to be willing to say, you know what, let's make a decision, but if circumstances change, then we may need to change our decision. It doesn't mean that we were wrong at the time. It just means we need to make a different decision to be right at this time. John Maynard Keynes, a UK economist, he was quoted as saying this: when my information changes, I change my mind. Why? What do you do, sir? And I think that's a really important thing for us to take on board, that we should always be thinking about what are we going to do to make the right decision now, even if it's different, and letting go of a decision that we made yesterday. As I said, I'd love you all to get a copy of this report, this new special report about working from home. Let's see if I can paste that in the chat room as well. And if you'd like to do that, just go there and just you can download it from there. So you can click the link and do that. The report will be up there for a long time, so you don't need to do it before the end of today's presentation. Any questions about that Monty Hall thing? I don't want to get into a big debate about the maths and the logic, but if you want to find it out, there's a lot online about the Monty Hall problem, including an online simulator where you can just press a button and it'll randomly play stay or switch, and it'll tell you which which one's going to win for you more often. So now we're looking at, so we've looked at these things which are to the first three energy levels are the ones that are kind of low energy, and you don't want a team that's, if all they're doing is resistant, reluctant, or even just compliant. What you want them to be is engaged, and this is the bottom level of engagement. I don't mean inspired, because we'll get to that, but I mean just at the very base level of engagement. Are they at, and I reckon the measuring stick for this is are they as productive as they were when they were in the office. So we're going to run another poll here. If you've already got the poll window open, great, because you can we can continue to use the same link. And if you haven't got the poll window open, then let me paste it in the chat for you as well, because the poll question is, how productive is your working from home team? So some people will have got this already and have started voting because you've got the window open. If you haven't, let me just paste the link in the chat again. So what we're looking for is just roughly, and I've said, is it around the same? Is it a little bit better or worse? And I'm just using a rough number of 20%, or is it more than 20% worse or more than 20% better? Okay, so let's see. Okay. So I've done this with one group that had very surprising outlier results, but almost everybody else, other groups, generally speaking, fall into the same categories. Okay, I think we've got enough now to have a representative idea. So it's really interesting to see. Isn't it interesting that no one has said that in the midst of a global pandemic, which happens once in a century, where people are really struggling and the economy is tanked, that nobody has said that our work from home team productivity, it has gotten much worse than in the office. And it's interesting because this is true. This is and I've been kind of tracking these numbers for the last 20 years or so, and there's no question about it. Productivity goes up when people are working from home, and I'm really pleased to see it's happening even in a pandemic. And despite the fact that many leaders they're worried about how they can keep their people productive and working as effectively as they were in the office. So Gloria says, is it related to our expectations? Not quite sure of your question there. And Julian says, yeah, it's a little bit worse, then much better, and now it's declining a bit. That's quite interesting. Yes, a relative expectation. So what I was hoping was that people are going to were actually saying, compared to our in-office team, how's our productivity? And actually, worker productivity, if I say like worker versus manager, even though I don't really like those terms, worker productivity tends to go up when people are working independently. They don't have interruptions and distractions. They're not called into a meeting every 5 minutes because it's easy to do that. So productivity in that sense tends to go up when people are working from home. Yeah, and Trevor's asked a question about how do you sustain that concentrated effort. Absolutely, Trevor. And again, we'll cover that next month. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. So I want to just share with you what's actually happening with leaders. So even though individuals their productivity is going up, great, and that is definitely a trend. Many leaders are saying that they're worried about how they can manage and lead effectively. And I know it's not just about productivity, because productivity is one thing, but then how do we lead effectively? So this research from Harvard, just in July this year, so that many leaders don't really know how to effectively manage a team that's not working in the office. And for broadly, there were two categories of reasons they gave. One is, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to lead in that environment. And secondly, I don't really trust that they're going to do it. Their performance is going to suffer. They're not going to stay motivated. Perhaps they're not even able to do it. So this whole idea of productivity is a big one, and it may be that there's a immediate bump in productivity, but it may decline, and we need to keep it going. So I won't talk about that more now, but we can certainly talk about that in next month when we talk about how to get unstuck and how to manage some of these issues. The next one, in fact, we're going to talk about moving to empowered. So how do you get people empowered? I shared this result that I showed you earlier from Sage people pre-pandemic, most people want to be empowered, and yet the working from home environment gets in the way. And some of the empowerment gains you may have made, maybe you may be losing them. So I just want to share with you here 5 things that people are actually saying about their workplaces now that they've been moved to working from home. 5 negative things, so some of the challenges that people are having. Somebody said, it takes me now 10 to 11 hours to do what I could do in 8 hours in the office. Somebody else says, look, I feel a little bit out of sight, out of mind, and that might harm my future career prospects. Somebody else said, this gender stereotyping and the gender imbalance is still alive and well. We both work from home, but I work downstairs and have to do supervising my kid as well as my while my husband works in isolation. Now, this is obviously not all men and so on, but still it's an issue that's happening in many workplaces. We're all navigating our own boats through the storm. Another one is about being able to have some of those difficult conversations, and if you're interested in that, then I've got a whole piece around managing conflict when you've got a distributed team, but we've got people working from home. And this last one I want to share, this is the one that got the most comments the last time I presented this. There are companies that are doing monitoring software now. Here's a comment from one of the participants saying that she's got software that if she's idle for a few minutes, a little warning will pop up and say, you got to better type something on your keyboard, otherwise we'll report you to the boss. So these are some of the things that get in the way of being able to truly empower your team members. So empowerment's hard enough in an office where you want to build judgment so that people can make well-informed decisions and then be able to work independently and autonomously. It's much harder when we've got this working from home environment that you've been forced to do, perhaps for the first time. Okay, so I don't see any questions or comments coming in. So let's move on to this last one, which is, so our time's tracking perfectly actually. So this is the next level beyond empowerment, because when you've got people who are engaged and productive, when you've got people who are empowered, and that means they can be collaborative, then you can have an inspired workplace. And this is where people work for meaning. And this is the interesting thing, is that this is not something new. It's actually amplified as a result of the pandemic, that people are really questioning, is my work meaningful? Am I happy with what I'm doing? Do I even want to work? But you may have seen there's a whole bunch of stuff that's been coming out during the pandemic about how to manage during a recession, the McCrindle report about Australia's recovery, labour market updates, and so on. There's a lot of this. How do we get back to, and how do we move forward as a result of COVID-19? So like my day job is doing all this research and being able to distill it for you, but I'm sure you've come across some of these things as well. And some of this is even pre-pandemic. What do employees want now? How do we create the best workplace on earth? What does the World Economic Forum says are the skills in the workplace of the future? And so all of these things, and I think you get the picture, are affecting our ability to create an inspiring workplace where people are inspired. And the key thing is that the inspiration happens when people are doing meaningful work that's aligned with their passion, but also aligned with the purpose of the company. So my second last poll for you today is this one about an inspiring culture. So again, if you've already got the poll window open, you can start voting on that one straight away. And if you don't, then I can paste it in the chat room for you one last time. You should be able to even see it in the chat, but just in case you can't, I'll just switch over to that poll window for you. Okay, so as you see, the questions are like, are you clear about how we're changing the world and passionate about it? So when I say we, your organization that you work for, so are you clear about what the organization's doing? And then are you individually passionate about it? And the next two are similar, but for your team. Is your team clear about how the organization is changing the world, and are they passionate about it? And you get to decide what world means and what change you're making. So it doesn't have to be that you're creating a new iPhone or sending people to Mars, but are you really clear about the purpose of your organization, and are you aligned, and is your team aligned? Okay, so this is interesting. I've worked with some groups where the answers are almost way off the charts because they're really, really clear about it. This group here, I think, is pretty typical. They're saying, yes, we're kind of like between 3 and 4, which is good, but how can you make it better? Okay, and then the very last poll, given that we've now got to the point where I've covered off all of the those 6 levels, is like, okay, now that I've given you all of those 6 levels, what's your working from home culture like? So are you, and the writing there says, are you in resistant and reluctant? Are they compliant? Are they engaged? And I think the test for that is as productive as in the office. Are they empowered? Like, do they feel that they can work independently and autonomously? And are they really inspired? So, do people really feel that they're making a difference in the world? Yes, I'm really pleased to see so many people on the, if you like, the right-hand side of the energy graph that I showed you earlier, which is either, engaged, empowered, or inspired. I was working with a group recently, and they said, actually, leaders from a number of different organizations, and they said, yeah, we're still in compliance. So people are doing what they're told to do, but they haven't quite got the energy to start thinking for themselves and being engaged and empowered. And we're not even thinking about inspired at this stage. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for taking part in that. I'm thrilled to see that. I'm really, really pleased to see that 3/4 of the people here are saying that we're engaged, empowered, or inspired. Really nice to see 20% in the top inspired space as well, because that's really good. That's really good because the working from home is can actually has really buffeted a lot of people around. That said, for some organizations, I've discovered that the best thing that you can do to get people on board is to start with inspired. In other words, give them meaningful work, make it really clear to them how their work has meaning and how it fits in with the purpose of the organization, and that pulls them along, because the purpose drives everything else. It's not true for everybody, and so I wouldn't prescribe that to everybody, but it does work for some organizations. Inspiration, Zoe says, when the mind is idle, in response to the continuous monitoring statement. Yeah, and that's right, Zoe. And that's why I think the whole idea of this continuous monitoring and having software that monitors you and stresses people out is just the wrong way. It's the wrong solution to that problem. But I totally understand, and I empathize with leaders who choose that. I don't think it's a good choice, but it's an understandable choice, because again, if you go back to, if you've got team members who are, I'm just going to kind of really extreme stereotype here. If you've got team members who their job is sit in front of a laptop and type and plug in numbers, then actually working from home helps them, because they can work independently, they can be productive, they can set up the environment that they want. Their leaders and managers, like if they are people leaders and managers, they think, oh, I've got to be looking after my people, but now suddenly I can't see them. What can I do so I can see what they're doing? And they go, oh, there's this monitoring software that my mate told me about, so why don't we implement that? That's a good thing. Now, I don't agree with the logic, but I can sympathize with their way of thinking. And, it's one of the challenges that we're facing now. Okay, so what comes next? As I said, I hope you've already got some actions that you can take away, but the really important thing I'd like you to do is just be part of this 3-part series, and you're welcome to come along. You're welcome to invite colleagues to these other 2 as well. So there will be other people than who attended today's presentation, but that's a good thing. So some of my private mentoring clients are going to be there. There are going to be some other people that are presented to who are also going to be there. I've done a couple of keynote presentations around this recently, and some of the participants there are going to be there as well. I run workshops and people are going to be there, but that's a good thing because you learn from other people as well. It'll be a different kind of experience. So instead of me presenting, it'll be me being as unplugged as I can be on an online presentation. So instead of presentation, it'll just be me sitting here answering questions with an old-fashioned pen and paper and clipboard, but really it gives us a chance to dig deeper into some of these ideas. And then the November session is around planning. If you'd like to get in touch with me before this, you've probably figured out by now I'm quite passionate about this. Please get in touch. I do run individual coaching sessions. I've got a 90-day coaching program for leaders, or actually a client of mine said, can I do this from one of my second in command leaders, one of the managers in my team, because he needs it more than I do, because it's his responsibility. I run workshops in person in Perth, online around the world, as well as facilitating leadership teams and speaking at conferences. So if you'd like to find out more, then please get in touch at gihanperera.com. I don't know whether those things appeared, but those are the things that we can do together, working together. If you'd like to get in touch, so please do, and let's have a chat about that. Just before we finish up, my very last comment for you is a suggestion based on this quotation from Benjamin Brewster in the 19th century. A bit tongue-in-cheek, he says, in theory there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. So if you've got some ideas from today, which I hope you have, and I hope you've written them down, or made notes on your iPad, or taken screenshots of particular slides, great, fantastic, but please put them into action, because only when you do will you figure out what's going to work well for you and for your team. So please take some action. I look forward to meeting you again next month for those who choose to re-engage. Thanks everybody. In the meantime, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the future. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.